Some families pass down silverware, others pass down rituals that look like evidence. In this video, we are going through 50 of the weirdest family traditions in the US, from holiday food crimes to birthday chaos that somehow became sacred law. If one of these actually gets a laugh, a cringe, or a what on earth, hit hype and keep score. 1. Instead of carving a dry Thanksgiving turkey, one Michigan household violently deep fries a massive pile of pickles. There is absolutely zero logic to this culinary crime. It is just a greasy mound of crunchy green weirdness dominating the formal dining table. Their official holiday motto is literally, "If it ain't brined, it ain't dinner time." Considering how most people overcook their poultry until it resembles desert sand, swapping it for a bucket of hot fry oil might actually be a genius upgrade. Your cardiologist is definitely going to panic, but chewing on pure fried sodium is undeniably festive. 2. Forget buying wildly overpriced roses for your spouse. One household in Pennsylvania enforces a bizarre Valentine's Day ritual, where everyone writes anonymous love notes exclusively to inanimate objects around the house. Last year, the most passionately written letter was dedicated directly to the kitchen coffee maker. The note literally read, "You are hot, reliable, and you make my mornings worth living." That is arguably the most honest and realistic romance of the entire 21st century. Humans will inevitably let you down or leave dirty dishes in the sink, but a fresh dark roast will never break your fragile heart. 3. Trick-or-treating in Vermont takes a deeply uncool turn for one specific family. Instead of dressing up as vampires or movie characters, they hit the streets doing full-on 1600s pilgrim cosplay. The parents passionately argue that this attire is somehow more historically accurate for the autumn season, completely missing the entire point of collecting free candy. You can only imagine the sheer psychological trauma these kids experience. Walking around looking like you just stepped off the Mayflower while your friends are dressed as superheroes is social suicide. Naturally, these historically accurate children are definitely not getting invited to the cool neighborhood parties. 4. Out in California, there is a household with a holiday rule that borders on actual psychological torture. They absolutely refuse to put up their Christmas tree until somebody successfully builds a gingerbread house that stays completely intact. If you have ever touched one of those kits, you know the frosting is basically useless white cement. One tragic December, this mandatory construction project took them 2 straight days, 6 heavy-duty hot glue guns, and enough colorful swearing to make Santa Claus turn his sleigh around. Holding the holiday spirit hostage over a collapsing graham cracker roof is pure festive evil. 5. Ringing in the new year down in Texas involves a surprising amount of blunt force trauma. One local family celebrates by aggressively smashing a giant piñata shaped exactly like the number of the outgoing year. But instead of filling it with candy, they stuff it with the most unhinged garbage they can find. During a recent celebration, the battered papier-mâché burst open and rained down tough beef jerky, plastic googly eyes, and tiny plastic farm cows. The official reasoning behind this chaotic shower of junk is simply that the previous year was wild. Nothing screams fresh start quite like taking flying dried meat to the forehead. 6. If you happen to be celebrating a birthday in a certain Colorado home, do not expect a standard sheet cake. This family strictly bakes a colossal, boulder-sized brownie shaped like a rugged mountain. They decorate this beast with literal frosting avalanches and position tiny gummy bears as struggling hikers. But the absolute craziest part is the strict rule that nobody eats a single bite until the birthday person successfully summits the dessert by jamming a toothpick flag into the very top. It is basically a high-altitude wilderness survival simulation, just with 10,000 calories and a massive sugar crash waiting at base camp. 7. We all know Idaho is famous for its crops, but one family takes it to a completely unhinged level by hosting the annual Potato Olympics. Instead of regular sports, family members fiercely compete in high-speed peeling, abstract mashed potato sculpting, and the highly dangerous raw spud shot put. You have not lived until you have seen grown adults aggressively throwing heavy root vegetables across a suburban lawn. The entire bizarre spectacle concludes with a synchronized, almost cult-like potato dance circling a massive bonfire. The aggressive carbohydrate energy flowing through this property is intimidating enough to terrify a professional nutritionist. 8. Valentine's Day. Gets painfully awkward in Indiana when one household dedicates their entire romantic evening to reciting heartfelt, deeply emotional love poems directly to their pets. Imagine walking into a living room and watching an adult man weeping while reading 14 consecutive rhyming sonnets to a hamster named Fluffy. During one of these sessions, the poor rodent was placed in a tiny wooden chair and looked absolutely terrified. Judging by the family photos, the hamster was deeply reconsidering every life choice that led him to that exact moment. Forcing a guinea pig to endure amateur poetry is basically mild psychological warfare. 9. Getting older in Virginia apparently means dealing with mandatory historical reenactments. One eccentric family celebrates every single birthday by forcing guests to wear highly specific period costumes. One year you might be sweating heavily in Victorian ball gowns, and the very next year you are clanking around the kitchen in full Viking armor trying to eat a piece of cake. The absolute lowest point of this tradition was the infamous Roman Empire party. Let us just say Uncle Frank suffered a catastrophic toga malfunction right in the middle of the living room. Some eras of history should definitely remain firmly in the past. 10. A married couple down in Kentucky honors their wedding anniversary with a brutal tradition they call the vow rehearsal. Instead of sweetly repeating what they said at the altar decades ago, they aggressively edit their vows based on everything that annoyed them about each other over the past 12 months. What starts as a romantic gesture always devolves into a vicious, full-blown roast session right in front of the kids. Last year, the husband included a detailed complaint about his wife's terrible driving, and Grandma nearly choked on her wine from laughing. Saving up your marital resentment for an annual performance is incredible therapy. 11. Living next door to a certain family in Kansas requires a lot of patience and maybe a heavy helmet. These amateur engineers celebrate birthdays by launching water balloons off their roof using a massive homemade catapult. They literally built a medieval siege weapon out of broken broomsticks and rusty trampoline springs just to celebrate someone turning 40. The real problem is their completely broken targeting system. Nobody has any clue where these colorful missiles are going to land. Judging by the furious phone calls they regularly get from 3 streets over, taking a flying water balloon to the face while mowing the lawn is a real threat. 12. Holiday meals usually involve relaxing on the couch, but one Oregon household enforces a mandatory pre-feast workout before anyone is allowed to touch the turkey. Just picture a group of annoyed adults wearing heavy, itchy, ugly sweaters, sweating profusely while doing burpees and push-ups on a freezing concrete driveway. Meanwhile, the teenager from next door is definitely filming the entire embarrassing spectacle for the internet. The physical toll of earning your mashed potatoes is very real. During a recent Thanksgiving, a middle-aged uncle completely blew out his hamstring while aggressively lunging toward the dessert table. The hospital bills cost more than the groceries. 13. Setting up holiday decorations in Georgia is treated like a brutal survival challenge by one stubborn family. They absolutely refuse to hang their Christmas lights until they have completely untangled last year's massive, chaotic ball of wires using 0 tools. They forbid scissors, pliers, or logic. It is just bare hands, raw stubbornness, and a lot of screaming. One recent December, this unnecessary battle took 4 grueling hours, caused a massive emotional breakdown in the garage, and required 2 emergency brakes just to aggressively eat candy canes. Even though the lights looked incredibly sloppy, they treated it like a major military victory. 14. A family in North Carolina has invented the ultimate test of human endurance, proudly calling it the annual porch sitting championship. The rules are incredibly simple, yet mentally exhausting. Competitors must sit in a chair on the front porch and do absolutely nothing for as long as humanly possible. No phones, no books, 0 conversation. The current reigning champion managed to stare blankly into the yard for 26 agonizing hours. Along the way, he acquired 17 severe mosquito bites and a farmer's tan that made him look like a poorly baked pretzel. It is the only sport where falling asleep makes you an elite athlete. 15. Springtime in Washington. State brings out the absolute weirdest behavior in one specific household. Every single year, they hold a deeply unsettling ritual where they sneak into the yard and softly whisper compliments to their plastic garden gnomes to ensure good luck. It sounds like the beginning of a low-budget horror movie, but they take it very seriously. They even threw a full-blown catered birthday party for a slightly chipped statue they named Sir Sproutalot, complete with tiny party hats and a mini cake. Naturally, the neighbors casually stopped making eye contact after witnessing a grown man toasting a piece of painted concrete. 16. Hosting a summer barbecue in Nevada usually means grilling some burgers. But one family turns their driveway into a massive, unnecessary construction zone. They actually import expensive beach sand just to build a full-scale sandcastle right next to the hot dog stand. A recent theme was medieval Vegas, featuring a highly detailed fortress with tiny plastic slot machines and a complex drawbridge that instantly collapsed the second someone sneezed. While the artistic dedication is somewhat impressive, the aftermath is a total disaster. It took them 2 full weeks and multiple vacuums just to get all that abrasive sand out of their living room carpet. 17. Living in a tiny New York apartment is claustrophobic enough, but one family decided their kids' birthdays needed even more chaos. Since their living room is basically the size of a closet, they invented the elevator party. They literally drag helium balloons, a booming Bluetooth speaker, and a massive layer cake directly into the building's main elevator. The kids absolutely love bouncing off the metal walls while riding up and down for hours. However, it is an absolute waking nightmare for any exhausted neighbor who just wants to get to the lobby in peace without stepping on a screaming toddler covered in sticky frosting. 18. Leave it to Maine to take a completely normal regional food and turn it into a bizarre spectacle. There is a local family so obsessed with seafood that they host an annual lobster fashion show right on their kitchen counter. Just picture live, confused crustaceans forcefully dressed up in miniature top hats, glamorous feather boas, and tiny plastic sunglasses, awkwardly crawling down a custom-made red carpet. A recent runway theme was crustacean couture, which sounds fancy until you remember these models are literally about to be boiled alive. Animal rights organizations are probably still having stress dreams about this highly fashionable but doomed event. 19. Over in Delaware, dealing with Thanksgiving leftovers is treated like a mad science experiment. One stubborn family absolutely refuses to throw away a single ounce of food until it has been violently transformed into at least 3 entirely new, unrecognizable meals. We are not talking about a simple sandwich here. They aggressively force their guests to eat dry turkey tacos, bizarre stuffing waffles, and truly horrific cranberry sauce smoothies. The absolute rock bottom of this culinary disaster was the year they confidently served frozen turkey gravy popsicles to innocent children. Nobody ever asked for a second helping of meat-flavored ice ever again. 20. Celebrating Christmas in New Mexico takes a dirty turn when one household hosts their annual desert treasure hunt. Instead of putting presents beautifully under a tree, they literally bury wrapped gifts all over their massive, dusty backyard. But these people are absolute menaces, so they bury cruel decoys right alongside the actual presents. Last year, a desperate relative dug a massive hole only to uncover a fully wrapped prickly cactus and a large rock aggressively spray-painted gold. Poor Grandpa spent 2 hours digging in the blazing sun, only to open a box that detonated a massive glitter bomb directly into his tired face. 21. Honoring family heritage takes a shockingly stupid turn every 4th of July in Connecticut. One family commemorates their ancestors' grueling immigration journey by forcing everyone to paddle across their backyard swimming pool while riding giant inflatable rainbow unicorns. They loudly insist to anyone who will listen that this is a deeply symbolic and respectful tribute. But according to their deeply annoyed neighbors and the furious homeowners association, it is really just a drunken excuse for grown adults to scream at each other while constantly tipping over into highly chlorinated water. Sinking on a plastic flamingo with a light beer is definitely an interesting historical tribute. 22. In Louisiana, one family turns Thanksgiving leftovers into a full-blown Mardi Gras parade inside the house. Instead of quietly reheating turkey, they build tiny floats out of shoeboxes, tape cranberry sauce cans to the sides, and march from room to room tossing beads and dinner rolls at confused relatives. The grandfather always leads with a battered trumpet he absolutely cannot play, which somehow makes the whole thing even louder. Last year, Aunt Denise slipped on a rogue biscuit during the kitchen turn and wiped out half the mashed potatoes. It is festive, chaotic, and completely unnecessary, which is exactly why they treat it like sacred family culture. 23. Apparently, Kentucky is the epicenter of bizarre poultry traditions. Another family absolutely refuses to eat their holiday bird until it receives a corporate-level introduction. Before anyone can grab a fork, the host fires up a laptop and delivers a full multi-slide PowerPoint presentation detailing the exact life story of the turkey sitting on the table. They aggressively lecture hungry guests about the bird's farming background and unique flavor profile, complete with a red laser pointer and mandatory polite applause. The roasted bird obviously does not care, and meanwhile, everyone is silently weeping as the expensive mashed potatoes turn into cold, inedible cement. 24. Spreading love on Valentine's Day involves aggressive trespassing and a lot of scotch tape up in Wyoming. One family executes a massive, coordinated strike they call the heart attack. In the dead of night, they silently sneak next door and cover their neighbor's entire house and cars with hundreds of aggressively pink paper hearts. Here is the absolute wildest part of this story. They have been doing this to the exact same clueless neighbor for 12 consecutive years. The guy has a massive security system and still has absolutely zero idea who is vandalizing his property with aggressive affection every single February. 25. In Arizona, one family has a Christmas tradition that feels less festive and more like a dare from the desert itself. Every year, they decorate a giant cactus instead of a tree, then insist on taking a formal family portrait around it while wearing ugly sweaters in weather that still feels like late summer. The real danger starts when they try to hang fragile ornaments on something covered in needles and bad intentions. One year, the father dropped a glass snowman, lunged to save it, and ended up hugging the cactus like it was a long-lost war buddy. The photo still exists, and yes, he is smiling through obvious pain. 26. In the dry heat of Nevada, one deeply misguided household rings in the new year by desperately trying to control the weather from their living room. Because it almost never rains outside, they perform a frantic, full-body rain dance entirely indoors. To make it authentic, family members aggressively chuck heavy buckets of tap water all over the furniture while blasting local weather reports at maximum volume on the television. Their historic success rate is absolutely terrible. They have caused over $3,000 in severe drywall and carpet damage while producing exactly 0 actual rain clouds outside. Embracing the desert environment would be significantly cheaper. 27. Labor Day weekend marks the beginning of the highly intense, completely disorganized Backyard Olympics down in South Carolina. But instead of planning actual sports, every single ridiculous event is completely made up on the spot by whoever is currently yelling the loudest. Historical highlights include the fastest hot dog construction race and a highly dangerous slip-and-slide long jump over a kiddie pool. But the absolute worst punishment is reserved for the loser, who is forced to complete the infamous wheelbarrow of shame. The defeated relative is pushed backward across the grass while aggressively waving a rubber chicken at the deeply confused neighborhood. 28. Let us talk about a family in Texas that is committing the ultimate state treason. Every Memorial Day, they host a massive, heavily advertised barbecue party, but absolutely refuse to cook a single ounce of meat. Instead of brisket or ribs, they proudly grill chunks of cantaloupe, plain zucchini, and thick slices of eggplant. To make matters worse, the host loudly corners confused guests and forcefully preaches that this is exactly what the real, historical cowboys ate out on the rugged trail. Somewhere out there, the ghost of an authentic 19th century cattle rancher is aggressively crying over this tragic lack of smoked beef. 29. Over in Utah, celebrating a birthday means risking major structural damage to your property. One reckless family skips the candles and strictly celebrates by setting off actual fireworks directly inside their carpeted living room. They loudly swear up and down that it is completely safe because they only ignite massive sparklers and small fountains. However, one quick glance at their completely scorched blackened ceiling tells a much different story. Their house looks like it recently survived a minor military conflict. Nothing says happy birthday to an 8-year-old quite like the deafening shriek of an active smoke alarm and the lingering scent of burnt synthetic fibers. 30. Easter morning in Iowa usually means hunting for plastic eggs in the grass, but one set of parents decided to make their kids actually work for their sugar. Instead of simply hiding the candy baskets behind a couch, they literally bury them deep in the backyard dirt. The sleepy children are handed shovels and forced to excavate their chocolates like tiny, sugar-fueled archaeologists searching for ancient artifacts. One specific year, it poured heavy rain the night before, and the sacred holiday hunt instantly devolved into a vicious, full-blown mud wrestling match over a crushed chocolate bunny. The washing machine will be running non-stop. 31. Idaho's obsession with root vegetables truly knows no bounds. One local family completely ditched the fragile, expensive chicken eggs for their Easter hunt and replaced them entirely with heavy, unpeeled potatoes. They spend hours meticulously painting raw russets in pastel colors, passionately claiming that this bizarre swap is far more authentic to their state's agricultural spirit. Honestly, hiding dense, 2-pound starch bombs in the tall grass takes the holiday to a completely different level of physical labor. Watching a tiny toddler struggle to carry a heavy wicker basket loaded with brightly colored baking potatoes is easily the funniest thing you will ever witness. 32. Down in Tennessee, kicking off the hot summer means participating in high-fashion garbage. One family insists that everyone creates and wears what they loudly call fruit suits. This means spending hours crafting homemade clothing entirely out of silver duct tape and chunks of actual sticky fruit. The undisputed champion last year confidently strutted around, wearing a massive, hollowed-out watermelon as a protective helmet, paired with a majestic flowing cape constructed entirely of rotting banana peels. While the local ant population was absolutely thrilled by this sugary buffet, the sheer sticky nightmare of cleaning it all up was practically biblical. 33. Living in Alaska messes with your internal clock, but one family turns the summer solstice into a mandatory sleep-deprived photo shoot. To celebrate the endless daylight, they force everyone to hike up a steep, muddy hill at exactly 1 in the morning, usually still wearing their pajamas, just to take the perfect midnight sun selfie. During one of these exhausted treks, they were completely photobombed by a massive, highly confused wild moose wandering through the background. Instead of running for their lives like normal people, they officially declared the giant beast their new family mascot. Alaskans are just built completely different. 34. April. Fool's Day in New Hampshire is treated like a bizarre culinary psychological experiment. One devious family has an annual tradition of serving their evening dinner completely in reverse. You literally start the meal by eating a massive bowl of ice cream and work your way backward until you end up with lukewarm soup. During one particularly savage year, the grandmother secretly hollowed out her famous dessert sundaes and packed them tightly with cold, mashed broccoli. The visual shock of biting into green vegetables disguised as chocolate fudge caused a table-wide existential crisis and severe trust issues that require expensive family therapy. 35. New Year's Eve in Pennsylvania is not about making positive resolutions. It is about aggressively owning your failures. One family drops the ball with a brutal ceremony called the Countdown of Regrets. Every person must stand up and loudly list the top 10 dumbest mistakes they made over the past 12 months. The winner of this humiliating contest is crowned right at midnight. Last year's undisputed champion was Aunt Linda, who accidentally texted her strict corporate boss a mirror selfie while wearing a giant fleece dinosaur onesie, accompanied by the bold caption, "Bring snacks." Ending your year by laughing at your own incompetence is incredibly healthy. 36. Labor Day is supposed to be a break from work, but a family in Missouri turned it into a competitive extreme sport. They transformed their grassy backyard into a silent arena for what they proudly call the laziest human contest. The core rule is incredibly simple but physically demanding. The first person to actually stand up from their chair is immediately disqualified. In the legendary showdown of 2022, Uncle Rick absolutely destroyed the competition by peacefully napping in a cheap lawn chair for an astonishing 11 hours straight. The remaining conscious relatives actually got into a furious debate about whether rapidly blinking counted as physical exertion. 37. Halloween. Up in South Dakota is not about collecting free candy. It is about surviving a terrifying generational nightmare. The grandfather of this family dresses up in a deeply unsettling, raggedy scarecrow costume and spends the entire dark evening silently hunting his own grandchildren through the shadowy hallways of the house. If this geriatric monster catches you hiding in a closet, the brutal punishment is immediate. You are forced to swallow a massive spoonful of spicy raw horseradish right on the spot. It is essentially an extreme game of hide-and-seek, heavily inspired by modern horror movies, served with a giant side of lifelong childhood trauma. 38. Knowing Florida, it should not shock you that they managed to turn Valentine's Day into a highly dangerous contact sport. One family completely skips the romantic dinners and hosts the aggressively chaotic Love Olympics. Relatives fiercely compete in utterly bizarre events like slippery chocolate fondue, wrestling, and a deeply unsettling round of speed dating involving completely random strangers they hired off the internet. But the undisputed main event is the incredibly violent dodgeball match, where foam arrows are weaponized against loved ones. Every single year, someone ends up leaving with a severe sprain or a bloody nose. Giving your spouse a concussion is true romance. 39. Tennessee is the home of country music, but one local household decided actual singing was completely overrated. Instead, they host an intense annual competition known as Silent Karaoke Night. The bizarre twist here is that competitors must dramatically mouth the lyrics to famous songs while thrashing around the living room without making a single audible sound. The plastic trophy goes to whoever delivers the most physically unhinged and emotionally devastating pantomime performance. A recent highlight was Aunt Sharon throwing herself against the furniture with so much silent passion that her thick eyeliner literally started running down her face. It was absolute tragic theater. 40. Winter mornings in Delaware are usually quiet, but not for the family that strictly enforces the annual cereal Olympics. Their kitchen transforms into a high-stakes battlefield where relatives fiercely compete in absurd breakfast challenges. Events include the high-pressure rapid-fire milk-pouring drill, the highly technical precision Cheerio stacking contest, and the intensely judged synchronized slurping round. Competitors train all year just to win eternal household bragging rights and a spray-painted plastic gold spoon. The only downside to this dairy-heavy competition is the massive digestive fallout, especially when that one violently lactose-intolerant cousin suddenly decides they want to compete for the gold medal. 41. If you want peak Florida energy, look no further than this household's chaotic approach to Halloween. Instead of ghosts or vampires, every single family member is legally required to dress up as a completely insane, real-life Florida man news headline. The undisputed champion from last year was Uncle Pete, who sprinted into the front yard completely shirtless, wearing bright neon swim trunks while aggressively wrestling a massive inflatable pool alligator. To really sell the performance, he spent the entire night screaming at passing cars that the plastic gator was his emotional support reptile. The local neighbors basically stopped walking their dogs past the house. 42. Over in Illinois, one genius family figured out how to completely hack the exhausting holiday schedule. They absolutely refused to stay awake until midnight on New Year's Eve like a bunch of tired zombies. Instead, they boldly reset all the clocks in the house 6 hours forward, chug their sparkling cider, and loudly scream Happy New Year right at 6 in the evening. They proudly refer to this brilliant time-traveling scam as Grandpa Time, and immediately put on their pajamas and go straight to sleep. Considering how terrible the last few years have been, ignoring the actual countdown is the most intelligent strategy possible. 43. Proving your physical toughness in the dusty heat of New Mexico requires an astonishing level of pure stupidity. One deeply unhinged family hosts an annual cactus-hugging contest right in their own backyard to see who has the highest pain tolerance. Competitors literally wrap their bare arms around prickly desert flora, while the rest of the family aggressively cheers them on. While they refuse to release their official medical records to the public, Nurses at the local urgent care clinics openly admit they now order extra industrial tweezers every single August just to deal with this specific bloodline. Macho pride is definitely a bizarre disease. 44. Celebrating the 4th of July in Nebraska usually means wearing red, white, and blue. But one eccentric family completely ignores the patriotic dress code. They boldly enforce a strict rule that everyone must attend the sweltering afternoon barbecue, wearing thick matching winter pajamas. Last year, the entire bloodline showed up to eat hot dogs while sweating profusely in matching neon pink flamingo onesies. When confused guests asked why they were doing this, the father aggressively yelled that America is about absolute freedom. Nothing screams freedom louder than a grown man eating potato salad in a giant pink birdsuit. You cannot argue with patriotism. 45. Easter in Wyoming gets incredibly weird when one specific family decides to completely abandon the classic bunny theme. Instead, they force everyone to dress up head to toe as giant, fuzzy prairie dogs. We are talking full synthetic fur suits, itchy plastic whiskers, and massive fake burrows constructed entirely out of stolen cardboard appliance boxes. The family literally spends hours silently crouching in the yard, intensely staring at the horizon like twitchy rodents sensing a predator. They claim this bizarre ritual honors nature, but the disturbed neighbors are convinced it is just a desperate audition tape for the lowest budget wildlife documentary ever produced. 46. Up in Ohio, one family refuses to begin any road trip until they complete what they solemnly call the snack draft. Everyone gathers around the kitchen table like sports executives and takes turns drafting chips, candy, jerky, and gas station nonsense into their personal travel roster. Trades are allowed. Betrayal is common. One summer, a cousin used the first overall pick on plain rice cakes and got mocked so brutally he nearly lost voting rights for the next vacation. By the time they finally leave the driveway, 40 minutes have passed and 3 people are already in an active dispute over trail mix clauses. It is less a family outing and more a crunchy collective bargaining agreement. 47. Dealing with relatives is always stressful, but one family in West Virginia has completely mastered the dark art of holiday conflict resolution. Every single Thanksgiving, right before dessert is served, they schedule a mandatory, highly structured event called the pre-pie argument. For exactly 15 chaotic minutes, someone sets a kitchen timer, and everyone is allowed to aggressively scream their deepest, darkest grievances at each other at maximum volume. It is absolute verbal warfare. But the second that timer rings, the screaming instantly stops. Everyone hugs, and they peacefully eat pumpkin pie. This next-level psychological engineering could probably solve most major global conflicts. 48. Summer in California officially starts for one chaotic household when they kick off their highly destructive, completely indoor watermelon seed spitting tournament. Rather than taking this messy event out to the sunny lawn, competitors forcefully launch wet, sticky seeds directly across the carpeted living room. They literally use sniper-like focus to dodge expensive lamps and leather couches while the entire family places bets. The ultimate champion proudly walks away wearing a cheap plastic dollar store tiara, but the victory is entirely hollow. The real grand prize is the dark, unspoken regret that washes over whoever is assigned to scrub dried fruit saliva off the television screen afterward. 49. Blowing out the candles takes a backseat to intense legal drama in Illinois, because one unhinged family stages a full-blown courtroom trial for every single birthday. The person turning a year older is formally dragged in and declared the prime defendant. Relatives aggressively present fabricated, highly detailed criminal charges, accusing them of things like horrific crimes against clean bedrooms or reckless, excessive screen time. They do not hold back, utilizing actual powdered wigs, slamming wooden gavels, and furious cross-examinations. After an hour of screaming objections, the verdict is always the same: guilty of being completely awesome. The theatrical commitment is honestly worthy of an Oscar. 50. Our final stop is in Wisconsin, where patience is tested to its absolute breaking point. This family refuses to build a normal campfire and strictly insists on toasting every single marshmallow individually over the tiny flame of a single cheap, unscented candle. Their all-time household record is a mind-numbing 300 marshmallows cooked in one agonizing night. Every single piece of candy has to be meticulously rotated, lightly browned, and formally taste-tested by the elders. This ridiculous marathon once took 5 grueling hours, triggered 3 massive screaming matches, and eventually set off the hallway fire alarm before they finally surrendered to the microwave. Do not leave a polite comment. Tell me which tradition is brilliant, which one is cursed, and which one proves America was left unsupervised for too long. That is the real ending here. Like the video if this scratched the exact part of your brain that enjoys beautiful nonsense. Subscribe for more of it. And use hype here if this one actually beat the other 2 videos fighting for your weekly taps.